Admiral Lee Sung-ho walked into his secret office, deep under the Korean mountains. The room was dark and cold, like a cave, but filled with glowing screens and computers that hummed quietly. His hands shook as he picked up the message that had arrived. Just minutes ago, through their hidden network of alien friends, message was written in alien symbols, but Lee could read it perfectly after years of study. His face went white as snow when he understood what it said. The Galactic Council had finally made their choice about what to do with Earth and humanity. The decision was not good for. 3 long years the alien species of the galaxy had been arguing about humans. They met in their giant space stations and talked endlessly about whether Earth should stay in the galactic community or be thrown out like garbage. Some aliens thought humans were too dangerous. Others thought humans could be useful. But now they had voted, and the result would change everything. Captain Park Min-ji. The metal corridors of the underground base. Her boots made loud sounds on the floor as she hurried to find Admiral Lee. She carried a datapad in her hands, and her face showed fear and worry when she finally reached his office. She was breathing hard from running so fast. Park threw open the door without knocking and rushed inside. Her uniform was messy, and her hair was falling out of place. She had been working for 20 hours straight, reading reports from their spy network across the galaxy. The news she brought was worse than anything they had expected. She handed the datapad to Admiral Lee and watched his face change as he read the terrible information. The aliens had not just voted to exile Earth from the galactic community. They had planned something much worse. They wanted to trap humanity in their own solar system forever, like animals in a cage. The alien plan was cruel and clever. They would cut off all the space roads that connected Earth to other star systems. No human ship would be able to travel to other worlds. No alien trader would be allowed to visit Earth. The aliens would also block all communication signals so humans could not even talk to the outside galaxy. But the worst part was the energy barrier. The aliens had built a terrible machine that could create a wall of pure energy around the entire solar system. This barrier would be invisible, but stronger than any metal. Nothing could pass through it, not even light or radio waves. Earth would become a prison floating in empty space. Admiral Lee sat down heavily in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. He had been a soldier for 30 years and had fought in many battles, but he had never faced anything like this. The aliens were not just rejecting humanity, they were trying to make humans disappear from the galaxy completely. The alien species called humans many bad names in their secret documents. They said humans were like a virus that spread too fast and caused too much trouble. They were scared of how quickly humans learned new things and how hard humans fought when someone tried to hurt them. In just 50 years since first meeting aliens, humans had spread to 12 different star systems and built a space navy that could fight against much older alien empires. Dr. Kim Hae-jin was the smartest person on Earth when it came to understanding alien minds. She had been studying how different alien species thought and acted for many months. Her research had discovered something very important. The council decision was not really about fear. It was about something more valuable. The aliens wanted the planets that humans had claimed. These worlds were full of rare metals and crystals that were needed to build advanced technology. The alien species had been mining these materials for thousands of years, but humans had found new deposits that were richer and easier to reach. Dr. Kim realized that the exile was actually a trick the aliens planned to wait 6 months. After putting up the energy barrier, then they would attack human colonies outside the solar system. Without Earth to help them, these colonies would be easy to capture. The aliens would take all the valuable mining worlds and humans would be trapped, forever unable to help their own people through their network of friendly aliens who believed humans deserved a chance. They learned more shocking news. The vote in the Galactic Council had been very close. 3 alien species had voted against humans. 7 species voted to throw Earth out, and 2 species refused to vote at Atha. Aliens who voted to help humans were mostly younger species who remembered what it was like to be new and struggling in the galaxy. They admired human courage and creativity, but the older alien empires were afraid that humans would become too powerful and challenge their control over the galaxy. One of the friendly aliens was a trader named Crix, who had worked with humans for many years. He sent secret messages warning that the Council had already started moving their war fleets into position around human territory. The attack would come exactly 6 months after the barrier was activated. President Yoon Dae-yoon received an emergency call in the middle of the night telling her to come to the secret bunker under Seoul immediately. She dressed quickly and was driven through empty streets by her bodyguards, not knowing that her world was about to change forever. In the secure meeting room deep underground, President Yoon listened as Admiral Lee explained everything they had learned. The room was filled with the most important military leaders and scientists on Earth. Everyone sat in shocked silence as they understood how completely they had been betrayed. General Choi Woo-bin was the first to speak after Admiral Lee finished his report. His voice was angry and his fists were clenched tight. He said the aliens had made a big mistake by thinking humans would just accept defeat without fighting back. Shindaram, the head of the secret weapons research program, stood up and told everyone about the new technologies her team had been developing in hidden laboratories. They had been working on weapons and defenses that used completely new scientific principles, things the aliens thought were impossible. The room filled with urgent voices as everyone began talking at once. Some people wanted to try diplomatic solutions to convince the aliens to change their minds. Others wanted to prepare Earth defenses for a long siege, but Admiral Lee knew they needed to do something much more dangerous and bold. He stood up and waited for everyone to be quiet. Then he spoke in a clear, strong voice. He said humanity had only one choice. If they wanted to survive, they could not wait for the aliens to spring their trap. They had to act first and strike before their enemies were ready. The plan that Admiral Lee proposed was so risky that several people thought he had gone crazy, but as he explained his ideas, everyone began to understand that sometimes the only way to avoid disaster was to do something that seemed impossible. President Yoon looked around the room at all the worried faces of Earth military leaders and scientists. She knew that the decision she made in the next few minutes would decide whether humanity had a future among the stars or would be trapped forever in their own solar system like prisoners. The betrayal by the Galactic Council had revealed the true nature of galactic politics. It was not about friendship or cooperation, it was about power and control. The older alien species wanted to keep their positions at the top, and they saw humans as a threat to their comfortable lives, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated human determination and the willingness of humans to fight for their freedom. Even trapped and outnumbered, humanity would not go quietly into exile. They would show the galaxy what happened when you tried to cage the human spirit. Within 6 hours of learning about the Council betrayal, humanity began the biggest military operation in their entire history. Every human in space received an emergency message telling them to return to Earth immediately. All vacation leaves were canceled, all trade missions were stopped, all exploration voyages were turned around. General Choi Woo-bin sat in his command center, surrounded by dozens of glowing screens showing the movement of human ships across the galaxy. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he activated secret codes that had been prepared for exactly this kind of emergency. Operation Breakout was now in motion. The operation had been planned years ago, when some smart military leaders realized that humanity might someday face a threat that required everyone to work together. They had created hidden supply depots in empty space, placed sleeper agents on alien worlds, and built secret communication networks that could not be detected by enemies. Began arriving at Earth from every direction, massive cargo vessels full of rare metals and advanced technology, sleek military cruisers with their weapons ready for battle, scientific research ships carrying the most brilliant minds in human space. Everyone was coming home to prepare for the fight of their lives. Engineer Song Ji-hoon had not slept for 3 days straight. He worked in a giant underground factory where hundreds of human ships were being modified with new weapons and defenses. His team of mechanics and technicians worked around the clock, welding. New weapons were based on scientific principles that most alien species had dismissed as impossible or too dangerous. To use quantum disruption fields that could tear apart the strongest energy shields, gravity bombs that could crush entire enemy formations, AI-guided missiles that could think and learn faster than any alien computer systems. Song wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched another modified cruiser roll out of the factory bay. The ship looked almost the same on the outside, but inside it was completely different. Every system had been upgraded with human engineering and alien technology, working together in ways that had never been tried before. Shindaram led a team of 200 scientists who had been working in secret for years. To understand alien technology, they had studied every piece of alien equipment they could get, their hands on taking apart computers, weapons, and even alien toys to understand how they worked. What they discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The aliens had much more advanced technology than humans, but they had become lazy and predictable. They relied too much on their computers to do their thinking for them. They followed the same battle tactics over and over again without changing or adapting. Humans were different. Every human commander fought in their own unique way. Human engineers were always trying new ideas, even if they seemed crazy. Human soldiers were trained to think for themselves and make quick decisions when their leaders were not around. This chaos and unpredictability could be humanity's greatest weapon, the most dangerous. Part of the preparation involved Lieutenant Colonel Bei Suho and his Special Forces team. Their mission was to sneak into the Council headquarters on Kepler Station, a neutral world where all the alien species met to discuss galactic politics. Bei and his team had been training for months to look and act like aliens. They wore special suits that changed their appearance and practiced speaking in alien languages. They memorized the layout of Kepler Station and studied the daily routines of every important alien official. Their job was to plant false evidence that would make it look like one of the major alien factions was planning to betray the others. If they succeeded, the Council would be too busy fighting among themselves to organize a proper attack on humanity. If they failed, they would probably be executed as spies. Captain Han So-young commanded the most important part of the preparation. Her stealth reconnaissance fleet had been secretly mapping every Council military base. Within 50 light-years of Earth, her ships were painted with special materials that bent light around them, making them almost invisible to alien sensors. For months, her crews had been taking pictures and recording data about alien defenses. They counted how many ships were stationed at each base. They identified the locations of fuel depots, ammunition storage, and command centers. They even tracked the movement patterns of alien patrol ships. The information gathered by Captain Han teams was crucial for planning the surprise attack. Every target had to be hit at exactly the right time and in exactly the right way. One mistake could warn the aliens and give them time to prepare their defenses. Han stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the last batch of intelligence reports come in. Her crews had done incredible work, sneaking through alien space like ghosts, but she knew the real test was still coming soon. They would have to use all this information in actual combat. On Earth, the preparation took on an almost religious intensity. Everyone knew that failure meant not just exile, but the eventual extinction of the human race. Children, who were barely 16 years old, volunteered for dangerous missions. Elderly scientists worked until they collapsed from exhaustion. Factories that had been making civilian goods were converted overnight to produce military equipment. Farmers were organized into supply units to keep the military fed. Teachers became trainers to prepare new recruits for battle. Even artists and musicians contributed by creating propaganda that would keep human morale high during the coming war. The most impressive sight was the military shipyards in orbit around Earth, where thousands of workers labored to build the largest space fleet humanity had ever assembled. Massive battleships that could fight entire alien squadrons, fast attack cruisers designed to hit hard and disappear, carriers full of fighter ships piloted by the best human. ACS President Yoon Dae-yoon visited the shipyards every day to encourage the workers and check on the progress. She knew that every day of delay gave the aliens more time to prepare their own forces. The surprise attack had to happen soon, or humanity would lose their only advantage. Gr. Kim Hae-jin worked with teams of psychologists and military strategists to understand how the aliens would react to a human attack. Her research showed that most alien species had not fought a real war for hundreds of years. They were used to diplomatic solutions and peaceful negotiations. The aliens expected humans to be passive victims who would accept their exile without fighting back. They had no experience dealing with a species that would rather die fighting than live as prisoners. This psychological advantage could be even more important than superior weapons. Major Kwon Ju-won trained thousands of ground troops for the most difficult missions they would have to fight on alien worlds, with different gravity, different atmosphere, and different terrain. His soldiers practiced in underground caves that had been modified to simulate alien environments. The ground forces were equipped with stolen alien teleportation technology that would allow them to appear inside enemy bases without warning. They trained to fight in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, and in complete darkness. They learned to use alien weapons and alien vehicles as the weeks past the preparations reached. A fever pitch, every human in the solar system was involved in some way. Everyone understood that they were not just fighting for Earth, but for the right of humanity to exist in the galaxy. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking humans would give up without a fight. The final preparations were completed just 3 days before the Council planned to announce Earth. Exile Admiral Lee gathered all the military commanders in the main briefing room deep under the Korean mountains. The room was packed with the best and brightest leaders humanity had to offer. Lee stood at the front of the room and looked at the faces of the people who would lead humanity into battle. Some were young and eager for their first taste of combat. Others were veterans who had fought in the colonies against pirates and raiders. All of them shared the same determination to protect their species. The plan was simple, but incredibly dangerous. They would strike at 17 different targets at the same time, catching the aliens completely off guard. The attacks would be coordinated to the second, with each team knowing exactly what the others were. Doing sexes would mean freedom for humanity. Failure would mean extinction. There was no middle ground. No room for compromise. The aliens had forced this choice on humanity, and now they would learn what happened when you cornered the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. The meeting ended with everyone knowing their assignments. The next 3 days would be spent in final preparations, checking equipment, saying goodbye to families, and preparing mentally for the battle ahead. In 72 hours, humanity would either win their place in the galaxy or die trying. 3 days before the Council planned to announce Earth Exile, humanity struck like lightning across the galaxy. Admiral Lee fleet appeared from hyperspace at 17 different locations at exactly the same moment the aliens had been expecting humans to cry and beg for mercy. Instead, they found themselves under attack by the fiercest warriors they had ever faced. The first target was the massive communication array that orbited around the gas giant Zarian Prime. This station was the size of a small moon and controlled all message traffic between the major alien worlds. If humanity could destroy it, the fighters that moved through space like angry hornets, her pilots had trained for months to fly these new ships that could change direction faster than alien sensors could track them. The human fighters dove through deadly energy fields that would have killed any normal pilot. The alien defenders were caught completely off guard. They had been expecting a normal diplomatic meeting in 3 days. The first human missiles began exploding against their shield spar. Fighters screamed through the alien formation, firing quantum torpedoes that could punch through the strongest armor. The alien ships tried to turn and fight back, but they moved. Battle around Zarian Prime lasted only 2 hours before the communication array was destroyed in a brilliant explosion that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Forces were landing on 3 different Council supply worlds using stolen teleportation technology. The alien guards were eating breakfast or sleeping when human soldiers suddenly appeared inside their most secure warehouses and command bunkers. Ground fighting was brutal and fast. Human soldiers fought with a desperation that terrified their enemies. They used alien weapons better than the aliens themselves and showed no fear even when facing impossible odds. Alien troops had been trained for peaceful police work, not real warfare against determined enemies. In the mining world of Keltros, to human marines stormed through underground tunnels, fighting alien security forces room by room. The aliens had better equipment, but the humans fought smarter, using grenades and explosives in ways that their enemies had never seen before. Major Kwan himself led the assault on the main command center, where alien officers were trying to coordinate their defenses. He and his team fought their way up 20 floors of the building, leaving destroyed alien soldiers behind them. When they reached the top, they captured the alien commander and all his staff. The most spectacular battle was happening at Council Fleet Command, where the aliens kept their most powerful warships. General Choi massive battleships had been hiding in the shadow of a dead moon for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. When the signal came, the human fleet powered up their engines and began moving toward the alien base like avenging angels. Their new quantum weapons charged up with energy that made space itself seem to bend and twist around them. The alien fleet tried to respond, but they were too slow and too surprised. The human battleships opened fire with weapons that the aliens had never seen before, beams of pure energy that could slice through metal like butter, gravity bombs that crushed enemy ships into tiny balls of scrap metal AI-controlled missiles that could think faster than any alien computer admiral, SEO. Minwoo commanded the lead battleship and watched with satisfaction as alien vessels exploded all around her. Her crew worked with perfect coordination, loading weapons and targeting enemies with deadly efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, but the real genius of the human attack was happening on Kepler Station, where Lieutenant Colonel Bay and his Special Forces team were carrying out the most dangerous mission of all. They had successfully infiltrated the Council headquarters, disguised as alien diplomats. Bay team moved through the station corridors like ghosts, avoiding security cameras and alien guards. They reached the central computer core and began uploading false information. That would make it look like the Thraxian Empire was planning to betray their Council allies while they were planting the fake evidence. The truth about the planned invasion of human colonies, this information could change everything if they could broadcast it to the entire galaxy. Working quickly, under extreme danger, Bay team hacked into the Council emergency broadcast system and began transmitting the stolen documents to every alien world in the galaxy. The truth about the Council. Deception spread like wildfire, causing chaos and confusion among the alien species. Their revelation that the Council had been lying about their peaceful intentions shocked many alien governments. 3 species immediately announced that they were withdrawing from the Council and would no longer support the war against humanity. 2 more species declared that they were switching sides and would help humans fight against their former allies. The battle reports came in from across the galaxy. It became clear that humanity's surprise attack had succeeded. Beyond their wildest dreams, the aliens had been expecting passive victims instead. They found aggressive predators who fought with a fury that terrified even hardened alien warriors. The space battle at Council Fleet Command raged for 6 hours, with ships exploding and burning across an area larger than most solar systems. Human fighters dove through enemy formations like mechanical sharks, biting and destroying everything they could reach. Captain, any human ship, the alien commander, tried to use his size advantage, but human ships were faster and more maneuverable, dancing around the giant enemy like flies around a sleeping giant. The final blow came when Admiral Lee himself led a desperate charge directly at the alien command ship. His battleship was badly damaged and losing power, but he refused to retreat. Instead, he activated the experimental ram that his engineers had installed on the front of his ship. The collision between Lee's ship and the alien flagship created an explosion that lit up the entire star system. Both ships were destroyed, but the alien fleet lost their command structure and began retreating in panic. The humans had won their first major victory against the galactic powers. News of the human victories spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Alien species that had been neutral suddenly began choosing sides. Some were impressed by human courage and wanted to join them. Others were terrified of human aggression and wanted to destroy them before they became too powerful. The old Galactic Council system began falling apart as member species argued and fought among themselves. The careful balance of power that had kept peace for thousands of years was crumbling under the pressure of human military doer. Kim Hyjin analysis of alien psychology had been completely correct. Some attacked their own allies thinking they were traitors. Others tried to surrender to humans before the fighting reached their worlds. The galaxy was transforming from a place of boring meetings and diplomatic speeches into a battlefield where only the strongest would survive, and humanity had just announced to everyone that they intended to be among the survivors, no matter what the cost. The 6-day battle had casualties on both sides, but human losses were much lighter than expected. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had superior tactics, courage, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The galaxy would never be the same again. As the smoke cleared from the great battles across 17 star systems, a shocking discovery emerged from the captured Council records that Lieutenant Colonel Bay team had stolen the truth about. Earth Exile was far stranger and more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Professor Lee Min-soo was Earth's most famous expert on ancient alien history. He had spent his entire career studying the ruins and artifacts left behind by long-dead civilizations. Now he found himself working with captured alien historians to translate documents that were millions of years old. The records spoke of an ancient race called the Precursors, who had ruled the galaxy long before any of the current alien species had developed space travel. these precursors, had been incredibly powerful with technology that seemed like magic even to modern aliens. But the precursors had faced a terrible enemy that had driven them to extinction before they disappeared forever. They had left behind a warning carved into indestructible monuments on 1,000 different worlds. The warning spoke of a great darkness that would return someday to devour everything living more. Importantly, the precursor warning described a young species that would appear in the galaxy. Final days, this species would be born of conflict, raised in struggle, and destined to choose between saving the galaxy or destroying it. Every detail of the prophecy matched humanity perfectly. The prophecy said the chosen species would spread across the stars faster than any race before them. They would fight with a fury that terrified older civilizations. They would learn and adapt at a speed that seemed impossible. They would either become the galaxy's greatest protectors or its final destroyers. Professor Lee's hands shook as he read the ancient text aloud to the emergency council meeting. The words had been written millions of years ago, but they described humanity as if the precursors had been watching Earth develop from the very beginning. Yusunho had been exploring the outer regions of the galaxy. When his deep space sensors detected something that made his blood run cold, massive objects were moving in the empty space between galaxies, heading directly toward their home objects. So large they could only be artificial. The returning enemy was called the Devourers in the precursor records. They were not a living species, but a race of machines that had been built to consume entire worlds and turn the raw materials into more. Machines they had been dormant for millions of years, but now they were waking up. Dr. Kim Hyjin worked with teams of scientists and alien experts to understand what the Devourers really were. The ancient records described them as a plague of metal, an energy that could strip a planet bare in just a few days, leaving nothing behind but empty space and drifting debris. Devourers had appeared in the galaxy once before. Millions of years ago, they had destroyed hundreds of civilizations and consumed thousands of worlds before the precursors had finally found a way to drive them back into the dark spaces between galaxies. But the precursors had paid a terrible price for their victory. Their entire civilization had been sacrificed in the final battle, leaving behind only ruins and warnings for future generations. The ancient monuments all carried the same message, that someday the Devourers would return, and only the chosen species could stop them. This revelation completely changed everything about the galactic political situation. The council, elder races, had known about the prophecy all along. Some had wanted to help humanity prepare for their destiny as galactic protectors. Others had wanted to destroy humans before they could become a threat. The Exile vote had been a compromise that satisfied nobody. The aliens who believed in the prophecy thought humanity should be guided and supported. The aliens who feared the prophecy thought humans should be eliminated completely. The Exile was supposed to be a middle path, but it had pleased no one. Ambassador Go Yoon found herself in the strangest situation of her diplomatic career. The same alien species who had voted to exile humanity just weeks before were now sending representatives to Earth begging for alliance and protection. Some alien delegations came offering friendship and military support. They brought gifts of advanced technology and promises of eternal loyalty. They had decided that if humanity was destined to save the galaxy, then they wanted to be on the winning side from the beginning. Other aliens came with threats and ultimatums. They demanded that humans submit to alien control and accept limits on their expansion. They were still afraid of human potential and wanted to keep humanity weak, even if it meant the galaxy would be defenseless against the Devourers. The most interesting visitors were the descendants of species that had been saved by the last chosen race millions of years ago. These aliens had been secretly helping humanity since first contact because they believed the prophecy was real and that humans were the galaxy. Next, Hope the Kithra were a race of living crystals who had survived the last Devourer invasion by hiding deep inside their home planet. They remembered the ancient war and had been preparing for the enemy return ever since. They offered to share their knowledge of Devourer technology and tactics. The Vorthok had been slaves of the Council for generations, but they were actually the survivors of a great civilization that had fought alongside the precursors in the final battle. They had pretended to be primitive and harmless while secretly preserving ancient weapons and battle plans. The Zephyrians existed as clouds of living gas that could manipulate energy in ways that solid beings could not understand. They had been watching humanity develop and had seen the signs of the chosen species in human behavior and achievements. These three species formed the core of what would become the human alliance they brought with them, not just military support, but also ancient knowledge that had been hidden for millions of years. Knowledge that would be crucial in the coming war against the Devourers. Zhang Hejin led the research team that began studying the ancient precursor technology. The aliens had been afraid to use these weapons because they were so powerful and dangerous. But humans had no choice if they wanted to save the galaxy. They had two master tools that could destroy entire star systems. Technology was based on principles that human science was just beginning to understand. It used the fundamental forces of the universe itself as weapons, manipulating gravity, time, and space in ways that seemed impossible. The learning curve was steep, and the margin for error was zero. Word of the prophecy spread across the galaxy. The political landscape changed completely. The old council system collapsed as member species chose sides based on their interpretation of the ancient warnings. Some joined humanity, others prepared for war against them. President Dao Yun addressed the human population in a broadcast that was transmitted to every human world. The truth about the prophecy and the returning devourers was too important to keep secret. Everyone needed to understand what was at stake. Reaction among humans was exactly what the aliens had expected. Instead of being frightened by the enormous responsibility they had been given, humans embraced their destiny as galactic protectors. They began preparing for the greatest war in galactic history. With enthusiasm and determination, young humans volunteered for military service in record numbers. Factories began producing weapons and ships designed to fight an enemy that could consume worlds. Human scientists worked around the clock to understand technologies that were millions of years more advanced than anything they had seen before. The galaxy was dividing into two camps: those who believed humanity was the prophesied savior species, and those who thought humans were too dangerous to be allowed to fulfill their destiny. The coming war would not just be against the Devourers, but also against those aliens who refused to accept human leadership. Fleet Admiral Cho Tae-woo found himself commanding forces that included not just human ships, but also vessels from a dozen different alien species. Each race brought their own unique abilities and technologies, creating a combined fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The alliance was not easy to manage. Different species had different ways of thinking, fighting, and communicating. Some aliens moved too slowly for human tactics. Others thought too fast for human commanders to follow. The process of learning to work together was complicated and sometimes dangerous, but gradually the alliance began to function as a unified force. Human creativity, combined with alien knowledge, produced innovations that neither side could have achieved alone: new weapons that could disrupt devourer systems, new defenses that could protect entire planets, new strategies that took advantage of each species' unique strengths. The first devourer scout ships were detected at the edge of the galaxy, just as the alliance was beginning to take shape. The ancient enemy had returned, and the final test of the prophecy was about to begin. Humanity would either prove themselves worthy of their destiny, or the galaxy would fall into eternal darkness. The formation of the human alliance happened faster than anyone thought possible. Within just 1 month of the failed Exile vote, 12 different alien species had formally joined humanity in preparing for the Devourer threat. These were not the old, powerful races that had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years, but younger species that had been ignored and pushed around for centuries. Fleet Admiral Cho Tae-woo stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the most incredible sight in galactic history: hundreds of ships from dozens of different species flying together in perfect formation. Human vessels painted with fierce colors flew alongside crystalline Kythera ships that sparkled like diamonds in space. The Vortex contributed massive cargo ships that could carry enough supplies to feed entire armies. The Zephyrians brought vessels that looked like floating clouds, but could manipulate energy fields in ways that seemed like magic. Other species added their own unique abilities to the growing alliance. Fleet working together was not easy at first. The different species had completely different ways of thinking and communicating. Some aliens thought in mathematical equations, while others communicated through color changes or electromagnetic pulses. Human commanders had to learn entirely new ways of giving orders and receiving reports. Captain Park Mingi found herself commanding a mixed squadron that included pilots from 6 different species. Her human wingman flew with aggressive tactics, while her Kithra pilots moved with perfect precision. Her Vorthok crews were incredibly strong but moved more slowly than humans. The training exercises were often chaotic and sometimes dangerous when a human pilot tried to perform a high-speed maneuver near a Zephyrian. Energy being the result was a spectacular explosion that lit up half the training area. Nobody was hurt, but it took 3 days to clean up the Mesbet. Gradually, the different species began to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. Human creativity impressed the aliens who had been following the same boring tactics for centuries. Alien knowledge helped humans understand technologies that they had only dreamed about. Dar Zhanghijin led the most important project in Alliance history. Her team of human and alien scientists worked together to develop new weapons that could fight the Devourers. By combining human engineering with alien science, they created technologies that neither side could have developed alone. The breakthrough came when they learned to create adaptive nanotechnology that could rebuild itself faster than enemies could destroy it. These tiny machines were like living metal that could change shape and function depending on what was needed. They could become armor when under attack or weapons when striking back. The real test of Alliance cooperation came when Colonel No Jae-sung was put in charge of training ground forces. From different species, humans were used to individual initiative and quick thinking. Kithra Vorthok warriors were incredibly tough but needed detailed instructions for everything. No solution was to create mixed units where each species did what they were best at. Humans provided leadership and creative tactics. Kithra handled precision operations that required perfect timing. Vorthok served as heavy assault troops who could break through any defense. The first real combat test came sooner than expected. Deep space monitoring stations detected the approach of investigate what they were facing. The mission was supposed to be simple reconnaissance, to gather information about enemy capabilities. But when Simfleet arrived at the target coordinates, they found something that horrified even battle-hardened human veterans. Entire solar systems had been completely stripped clean with nothing left but empty space and drifting cosmic dust. The Devourers were even more terrible than the ancient records had suggested. Their ships were not just weapons, but massive factories that could consume planets and turn the raw materials into more Devourers. Every world they destroyed made them stronger and more numerous. First battle between the Alliance and the Devourers was a disaster sim task force. Was outnumbered 10-1 by enemy vessels that were larger and more powerful than anything they had ever faced. Half of the joint fleet was destroyed in the first hour of combat, but even in defeat, the Alliance learned valuable lessons about their enemies. The Devourers were incredibly powerful, but they were also predictable. They followed the same attack patterns over and over again without changing or adapting. Human pilots who survived the battle brought back crucial intelligence about enemy weaknesses. The news of the defeat shocked the galaxy. Many species that had been considering joining the Alliance decided to try negotiating with the Devourers. Instead, others panicked and began fleeing toward the Outer Rim, hoping to escape. The coming invasion but humanity reaction was exactly what their alien allies had hoped for. Instead of being discouraged by the defeat, humans became even more determined to win. They analyzed every detail of the battle, looking for ways to improve their tactics and weapons. Admiral Lee organized emergency meetings with all Alliance commanders to discuss what had been learned from the first contact. The Devourers were powerful, but they were not invincible. They could be damaged and destroyed. If the Alliance used the right tactics, the key was to avoid fighting the Devourers in straight battles, where their superior numbers and firepower gave them an advantage. Instead, the Alliance would use hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. And Force Captain Han So-young's stealth reconnaissance fleet became even more important as they mapped Devourer movements and identified key targets. Her invisible ships followed enemy formations for weeks, gathering intelligence that would be crucial for planning future attacks. The Alliance also began developing new strategies that took advantage of their diversity. Human ships would serve as fast attack forces that could strike quickly and retreat. Kithra vessels would provide long-range fire support with their precision weapons. Vorthok ships would serve as mobile fortresses that could take enormous amounts of damage. Darkim Hyjin psychological analysis proved crucial in understanding How different. Alliance species reacted to combat stress. Humans fought better when they were angry or desperate. Kithro performed best when they had detailed plans to follow. Zephyrians needed to feel that they were protecting something important. The Alliance training program was redesigned to prepare each species for their role in the coming war. Humans practiced aggressive assault tactics. Kithra drilled in defensive formations. Vorthok learned to coordinate their attacks with faster-moving allies. More Devourer scouts appeared at the edge of the galaxy. The Alliance expanded to include 37 different species. Some brought powerful military forces, others contributed advanced technology or crucial resources. Everyone understood that. They were facing an enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. The transformation of galactic politics was remarkable. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were now working together against a common threat. The old system of council, meetings, and diplomatic negotiations was replaced by military cooperation and shared sacrifice. President Yoon Da-yoon found herself leading not just humanity, but a coalition that included beings she could barely understand. Some of her allies were clouds of living gas, others were machines that had achieved consciousness. Still others were so alien that communication required special translation. Equipment. But, despite all their differences, the Alliance members shared one crucial characteristic. They all refused to give up without a fight. The Devourers had expected to find a galaxy of weak civilizations that would surrender easily. Instead, they found determined resistance, led by the most stubborn species in the galaxy. The Alliance fleet grew larger every day as more species joined the fight. New shipyards were built to produce vessels designed specifically for fighting. Devourers' training academies were established to teach young beings from different worlds how to work together. In combat, the most impressive development was the creation of integrated crews where humans and aliens served together on the same ships. A human captain might have a Cathura navigation officer, a Vorthok weapons specialist, and a Zephyrian engineer. Each brought their unique abilities to make the ship more effective as the Alliance prepared for the final confrontation with the Devourer main fleet. Everyone understood that the coming battle would determine the fate of the galaxy. If they won, the Alliance would become the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization. If they lost, everything they had built would be consumed by the hungry machines from dark space. The Devourer invasion began in earnest 18 months after humanity first struck against the Council. They came not as a single fleet, but as a spreading wave of destruction that consumed everything in its path. Entire star systems disappeared from the galactic maps. As the mechanical plague advanced toward the core worlds where most civilized species lived. Supreme Commander Lim Sujin stood in the command center of New Harmony Station, humanity massive mobile headquarters that had become the heart of galactic resistance. Around her, representatives from 43 different species worked together to coordinate the galaxy's desperate defense. The situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The Devourers had grown stronger during their long sleep in dark space. They had learned from their ancient defeat and developed new weapons and tactics that made them nearly unstoppable. Every world they consumed made them more powerful intelligence. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The mining colonies of Kepler-7 had been stripped bare in just 6 hours. The beautiful garden worlds of the Altarian system were now nothing but empty space. The industrial planets that had supplied the old Council with manufactured goods were gone without a trace. But the Alliance refused to give up. Captain Ru Donghian led the last human carrier group in a series of desperate raids against Devourer supply lines. His pilots flew missions that had almost no chance of success, diving into the heart of enemy formations to destroy key targets. The young pilots under Ju command were barely out of training, but they fought with a courage that amazed even their alien allies. They flew their fighters like guided missiles, ramming into Devourer vessels. When their weapons ran out, many of them were children who had volunteered to die so that their families might live. The alien members of the Alliance had learned to fight with human determination. The crystalline Cathira, who had once been peaceful traders, now threw themselves into battle with desperate fury. The gas cloud Zephyrians, who had never known violence, became fierce warriors who could tear apart enemy ships with pure energy. The final battle would be fought at the Spiral Gate, an ancient structure left behind by the precursors that controlled access to the galaxy inner systems. The gate was a massive ring of unknown metal that could open doorways through space itself, allowing ships to travel instantly. between distant star systems. If the Devourers captured the Spiral Gate, they would be able to attack dozens of worlds, simultaneously spreading their forces throughout the galaxy core faster than any defense could respond. If the Alliance could hold the gate, they might be able to trap the enemy in a killing field, where superior numbers would matter less than superior tactics. The defense of the Spiral Gate required every ship, every soldier, and every weapon that the Alliance could gather. Fleet Admiral Cho positioned his forces in a sphere around the ancient structure, with human vessels forming the outer attack line and alien ships providing support and heavy firepower. The Devourer fleet that approached the gate was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Millions of mechanical ships moving in perfect formation like a swarm of metal insects. Their vessels ranged from small fighters to massive world killers that could destroy entire planets with a single shot. Admiral Se Minwoo commanded the Alliance left flank from her flagship, a massive human battleship that had been upgraded with the best technology from a dozen different species. Her crew included beings from 8 different worlds, all working together to operate weapons that could tear holes in space itself. The battle began when the first Devourer scouts tested the Alliance defensive perimeter. Human fighters launched from their carriers and raced toward the enemy like angry hornets. Alien vessels charged their energy weapons and prepared to unleash destruction on a scale that would be visible from neighboring galaxies. The fighting was unlike anything in galactic history. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up entire star systems. Energy beams powerful enough to destroy moons swept across the battlefield. Gravity weapons twisted space itself into weapons that could crush fleets of enemy vessels. For 3 days, the battle raged across an area of space larger than most solar systems. Both sides threw everything they had into the fight. Knowing that defeat meant extinction, the Alliance fought with desperate courage while the Devourers attacked with mechanical precision. Captain Park Minji led her mixed squadron in a suicide attack against the Devourer command ship, a vessel so large it had its own gravity field. Her pilots came from 6 different species, but they flew together like they had been born to fight as one unit. The breakthrough came when Admiral S. flagship was crippled and surrounded by enemy vessels, with her ship dying around her and her crew preparing for death. She made a decision that would save the galaxy. She activated the experimental quantum weapon that Dr. Shin team had developed. In secret, the weapon was based on precursor technology that no one fully understood. It reached into the fundamental structure of space and time itself, creating a tear in reality that swallowed everything nearby. The explosion was visible from 3 galaxies away and created a gravitational distortion that pulled in hundreds of Devourer ships. The destruction of the Devourer command vessel cut off the enemy fleet from their home base in dark space without their central coordination. The mechanical swarm began to malfunction and break apart. Individual Devourer ships continued fighting, but they could no longer work together as a unified force. General Choi seized the opportunity and ordered a full Alliance assault on the confused enemy formations. Human ships charged into the chaos, firing every weapon they had. Alien vessels followed close behind, using their unique abilities to maximum advantage. The Cathura used their precision targeting to destroy key Devourer systems. The Vorthok rammed their heavily armored ships into enemy vessels too large to destroy with conventional weapons. The Zephyrians wrapped themselves around Devourer ships and tore them apart with pure energy. The tide of battle turned as more Alliance reinforcements arrived from across the galaxy. Species that had remained neutral decided to join the fight when they saw the Devourers could be defeated. Even some of the old Council races sent ships to help in the final assault. The remaining Devourers fought with mechanical desperation, but they were no match for the combined fury of 43 different species united in their determination to survive. The enemy fleet was systematically destroyed over the course of 6 more hours of brutal combat. The last Devourer ship exploded in a flash of twisted metal and dying energy. The galaxy fell silent for the first time in months. The ancient enemy had been defeated, but at a terrible cost. Billions had died, and entire civilizations had been wiped from existence. The surviving Devourers retreated into the dark spaces between galaxies. Just as they had millions of years before, they were defeated but not destroyed, and everyone knew they would return someday. But when they came back, they would faced not a divided galaxy but a united one Supreme Commander Lim, looked out at the wreckage of the great battle, and knew that everything had changed forever. The galaxy would never again be the same collection of separate species, pursuing their own interests. The alliance forged in the fires of war had become something permanent. Humanity had not just saved themselves, they had saved everyone. The young species that the galaxy had tried to exile had become the foundation for a new kind of civilization based on cooperation rather than competition. The Galactic Council had voted to cast out Earth, but humanity had acted first, and in doing so had transformed the galaxy forever. The prophecy of the precursors had been fulfilled. The chosen species had faced the ultimate test and had proven themselves worthy of their destiny. The galaxy had been saved by the determination of beings who refused to accept defeat, no matter how impossible victory seemed. President Yoon Da-yoon addressed the survivors of the great battle in a ceremony held at the Spiral Gate. The ancient structure had been damaged by the fighting, but it still functioned as a symbol of what different species could accomplish when they worked together. The new galactic government would be based on the alliance principles that had won the war. Every species, regardless of size or power, would have a voice in decisions that affected everyone. The old system of domination by the strongest had been replaced by cooperation among equals. As the alliance fleet began the long journey back to their home worlds, everyone understood that they had witnessed the birth of a new age. The galaxy would still face challenges and dangers, but it would face them united. The greatest victory had not been defeating the Devourers, but proving that different species could work together for the common good. The stars themselves seemed brighter as the Alliance ships headed home, carrying the news of victory to every world in the galaxy. Humanity had started as outcasts facing exile, but had ended as the leaders of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known.